button here. So keep that in mind, again, to our community site and our YouTube channel. I think that we'll certainly have it up there for quite some time, and it might make a good refresher, and as I understand, it gets better over time. So feel free to watch it as many times as you'd like. Share it with other folks, and hopefully it's gonna provide some benefit to you on site. So for questions, we will have a question and answer time at the end, but please enter your questions in the chat, and we'll use that to select questions. So we'll answer as many questions as we can through the question and answer time period. And then for those that we don't get to, we'll post answers to, as we did previously, on the community and in the YouTube channel or YouTube site. So feel free to ask as many questions as you want. Again, if we don't get to them, we will definitely answer them and provide those out to everybody. So today we have Jeff Keller speaking and demoing the creation of Uniprint installation packages. Jeff's a tenured senior support engineer. He's one of our best, and I'm sure that many of you out there have spoken to him. I'd be surprised if he hasn't spoken to all of you joining today. So I guess without further ado, I'll introduce Jeff, or have Jeff get started here on Uniprint installation packages. So Jeff, thank you.
Hi everybody. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great, Jeff.
Okay, great, thank you. Welcome everyone. Today, my name is Jeff Keller, as Frank said. I've been with Pharos for a long time now, and I've probably worked with many of you and spoken to many of you at the conference. Today's agenda is Uniprint printer installation packages. So I'd like to cover the what, who, where, and when are they. The what are they? Uniprint printer installation packages. Packages, they're small built executables that contain a print queue, a print driver's dev mode driver settings, and they contain the pop-up client software component that allows for the pop-up client and our notify client to be used on a client workstation. Who will use installation packages? Installation packages are typically used by end users, whether it's a staff, a user, that's where they're used by. Where do we find them in Uniprint? Installation packages are located in Uniprint in the Pharos Administrator section under Packages. There's 4 different areas in the tree in the Pharos Administrator, and we'll go through those. When do you use them? Well, you use them for various reasons. One reason may be you want to install a local printer instead of a network printer to a client machine. And that local printer, and you want to provide some dedicated default settings. You use them when you want to use the pop-up client, and that allows users to enter data into a dialog window that's then moved into the system for many and various reasons. Things we will cover today are going to be the installation package settings. What those settings are. We're going to add a package definition to our Uniprint system. We're going to configure the print queue, and that means changing the default settings to something you'd like, and talking briefly about that. We're going to build packages based on those definitions. A definition is merely a group of settings that is in the Pharos Administrator. Deploying install packages to client PCs using the Uniprint website. I'll discuss the Uniprint website, where you can find it and what it is. And a quick overview of what we call custom modules. Some of you may go, custom modules. A custom module is a small little executable that can be installed at the end of a install package to perform some other task. And I'll discuss a simple task that we can use and demonstrate that today. So without ado, I will change the script, and we'll move over to my Uniprint server. This is my Uniprint all-in-one principal server. You notice I have the Pharos Administrator open. Packages are located, as I said, under the Packages section. You can either click the links here under the tree, or you can go right to managing each one. So under Packages, we have Package Global Settings. This is an area where you'll configure the location that the files will be built to, the executable. This is a location where you can download via web browser the Uniprint, get to the Uniprint website. And then we have, lastly, what we call a shared directory. The shared directory is where the source files are kept, and those are the various modules. The package will consist of a number of modules. It'll consist of a install module, consist of a printer module, it'll consist of a queue module, it'll consist of an uninstall module, and it has another module, and we'll touch on that, that is what's used to actually control the whole installation of the package under the hood. Package definitions. Package definitions, this is where you'll see where you have packages either built or needing to be built. And this is where you can find all of your package definitions. The custom module section is where you can see I have a custom module already installed into Uniprint, and we'll be using this later, and we'll talk about creating a new one. And client installers. Under packages, it also provides the link to the client installers, and this would be the Pharos Station installer, the sign-up client installer, and the Pharos Remote installer. Unfortunately, we won't talk about those today. It's just under the packages section, but this is also where you can find, if you want to click on the link, to take you right to the folder where these exist. We're going to focus today on packages. So a package comes with a number of settings. What we have is, first I'll point out in this display here, you'll see the name, the supported architecture, if you have a 32-bit or a 64-bit driver, x86, x64. What that package contains. Here's one that only contains a 64-bit driver in it. It will only install on 64-bit workstations. The last build time, this is the last time that you actually built, quote unquote, the package. And then what the base file name is. And we'll talk a little bit about what the base file name. It's in this view, there is a right click on the columns, and you can select columns. And I can add my description column, and the description is what's going to be seen down here. Now at any time, if you hover over these different fields, you'll notice in the Pharos Administrator it'll give you a little tooltip that'll tell you what that means. Base file name serves as a base for the file names of all files included in a package. You have your supported architectures, last build time. The custom modules, the EULA, that's the end user license agreement, text file name. There's a web page group where you can group your packages on the Uniprint website, and we'll show you that very shortly. And there's the Pharos supplied modules, the uninstaller, the pop-up client, and the automatic updater. And then lastly, we have queues. This is a list of print queues that we are going to want to include in this install package. You can have many install packages. You can have an install package that contains the same queue, but doesn't include the updater component. You can build another package with the same queue that does include the updater component. So it's very easy to create a package for a print queue, and for one group of users or one lab or one building or one area of your Uniprint system, you don't want the Uniprint automatic updater to fire or come involved, then you can create a separate package that does not include that. So it's very easy. You can create multiple packages. You can have a package with an end user license agreement for one group of users using the same print queue. So next I want to go through the actions pane over here on the Pharos Administrator. You'll see we have an insert, a delete, a build, Pharos print map builder, change control. So just let's go out to the web page first, and we'll just show you where the install packages would be found. So I'll open up a web browser. And what you'll get is a web page. When you build your packages, this is the deployment section. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but I wanted to show you this quickly. It has 3 tabs, a home tab. You can click on packages, or you can click on the packages tab, and it has a maps tab. So this is where you'll see all of your packages once they're built. One thing you'll notice is, the very first page has auto detect for all of our packages. Uniprint will build two types of packages. When we build our package inside of the Pharos Administrator, Uniprint will build two different executables. It'll build what we call a light LTE executable, and it will build what we call a full executable. The light executable functions by connecting to the Uniprint server from the client workstation, checking the manifest file on the server to see what files the package needs, and then it downloads the individual modules one at a time, and then it begins the installation process. That is what we would call the auto detect package. That's the light package. On the website, if you go to the very bottom, you'll see there's a small little link here that says View All Packages. When you do View All Packages, you'll see the view has changed, and now under my package section, I have the auto detect version, and I can see my 32-bit version, and I can see my 64-bit version. So for 32-bit workstations, they would click on this link, and you notice the size difference. The full packages are much larger in size, and that's because they actually contain all of the components, the driver, the queue information, the pop-up client, the modules, and things like that. Whereas the light package is very, very small footprint, but it will download all of those modules. Sometimes you may find that you want to provide an end user with the full package. You might want to copy this executable to a network share or a different location, and that way the client computer does not have to connect to the server to download all of the various modules. You can go one step further at the very bottom of the Uniprint website while we're looking at it. It's called View Module List. If we click on the View Module List, all you see is a list of all of the modules, and I'll show you where these are located. All of our modules are going to be located where our shared, our package build location is located. So that's the C $, it's a share, inet pub ww root Uniprint. So if I navigate out to that directory, you'll see in here we have all of those module files, the light package, 2.1 megabytes, and then we have the 32-bit package, and we have the 64-bit package. And that's all of these. It'll create each one of these, 3 of these, for each package. We also have the manifest website file, and there should be the other modules are actually, I think that they located modules directory. We have our check module, part of it. I have the pop-up module, the uninstall module, the updater module, and I have my custom module. So you can see this is where the actual files live on disk. You can copy these files. You can go back to the queue. You can copy this direct queue pop-up client install package, and you can provide that to your end users in various ways. You can leave it on a share, like I said. You can put it into a location where you have maybe your organization has a website that you point your users to for printing, and they can drill down through and they can click a link and download this from your website. It doesn't have to use you don't have to use the Uniprint website. So just showing you, this is where all the modules are that we have, and that's where the modules are located on disk. Just one more thing I'll point out while I'm here about the Uniprint website. We have our packages and we have maps. You'll notice it's a very little used feature. It's called maps. What it allows you to do is it allows you to build a map, a website through the Uniprint product, where you can say click on Simple Campus. I'm in the arts building, so I'll click on the arts building. I'm currently printing on the second floor lab, so I'll click the second floor. And I'm actually over in this lab, so I'm going to click on this printer. And the user would then be, prompted to download the install package, but in the demo map, you'll see I get this message. It's a sample map, and on a real map, you could configure it to point to one of the packages. The Arts Department, My Canon Duplex package is what they would get. To learn more about the maps, I won't go into details to it because there's quite a lot of bit for the maps, but if we go back to our package definitions screen in the Pharos Administrator, you'll notice on the far right-hand side, there's the Pharos Print Map Builder, and you get the Pharos Print Map Builder application. Just briefly, I would open up a project. I would choose the simple map, and this is the simple map. I won't go into details because it's a little bit, there's a lot to it. It's not that difficult. One of the things I always recommend to people with Pharos Uniprint and using the Pharos Administrator and even the Maps program is if you press the function 1 key on your keyboard, you'll get the Pharos Print Map Builder help file. And there's a lot of good information in here about how to adjust or build a map and add your own icons and add your own images and pictures and things like that. So just wanted to point that out. It's a fun little tool, and it's used with the Uniprint packages. So we'll go back to our packages here, and let's build ourselves a package. So I think I'm going to start with inserting a package. And here I'm going to give my package a file name, a name of the package. That's the display name. This will be the name that will show up in our Uniprint website. So I'm going to call it Webinar Lexmark Mac. Doing that just to differentiate it. I'm going to use Lexmark print queue and a print queue that I use with my Mac, or that Macs can use. I'm going to copy the same value, and I'm going to paste it into the description field. If you notice, when I clicked here, the base file name already populated itself for us. I'm going to put my description in here, and maybe my description will be sample package testing. You can put any description you like. It'll show up on the web page as the description. I'm not going to use any custom modules for this one. I'm not going to use an end user license agreement for this one, but this one I will use the uninstaller, the pop-up client, and I'll include the automatic updater this time. I'm going to choose a print queue. The interface is a little scrunched, so what I like to do is grab the corner here with my mouse and expand it out so I can easily search for and find the print queue that I'm going to use today. So today I'm going to use my Lexmark, which is using a PCL driver, and it's a SRH, that's secure release here. That's my little acronym, my nomenclature. I usually put the name of the printer, the make, I put a Q, and then I have the PDL, we call it page description language. That's PCL PostScript. So I can see I have some with PCL 5 and PCL 6, so I can easily identify what my Q is. And there's many ways, so you can use different naming conventions. Everyone has their own. It's what works best for you. And I'm going to choose my Mac printer queue that I use. And I'm going to click OK. Now that I have all the values I want for my install package, I'm going to click the OK button. And Uniprint now is going to add this to the system. And you'll see that I now have my Webinar Lexmark Mac print queue with a description of sample package testing. If you notice, under supported architectures here, it says must rebuild. That's because it's brand new, and the last build time is not built yet. So we're going to go ahead and build this package. I just click on the build button. This brings up the package builder. So let's talk a little bit about the package builder and what this little application does. The package builder takes the print queue, the dev mode driver data, and which includes all of the settings of the print queue, and it verifies the integrity of those files, and then you can click the start button, or you can click the show files button, which will take you to this folder as well. Before we build this package, let's talk about the settings of the print queue. So we're going to close this at the moment, and we're going to come back to build our package. This package includes my Lexmark queue, PCL SRH, and my Mac queue. So on my server, I'm going to go open Windows Printer Management. Because one thing, when you're building a package and you want to put it on a client machine, you may want it to default to duplex and black and white, monochrome. You may want to default simplex and duplex long edge, or short edge. You may want simplex. You may want to default the queue to color or monochrome and other different settings. So we're going to go look for our Lexmark Q PCL SRH here, which is this one. If I right-click on this and I go to Properties, this is where we'll find the Windows Printing System properties of a Windows Print Queue. Not a whole lot of options for this Lexmark printer. You can see that it's using the Pharos System Secure port as usual, because my users actually print to this. Start printing immediately, print processor, security tab, install options. What we're really concerned with is things like the install options and things like the advanced settings and the printing defaults. So what I'll do is I'll open up the printing defaults tab button, and this brings up the print default properties for my Lexmark print queue. So this is where we would come into the print queue before we build the package, and we would make all the changes we want. I want two-sided long edge this time, collate copies, and let's say I default to landscape. Paper, I'm not going to make any changes here. Print quality, I'm not going to make many changes here, or other options, I'm just going to leave these. So my main concern with this package is I want to default to landscape, and I want to use two-sided long edge. So I'm going to click the OK button to save my settings. I'm going to open it back up again just to make sure that the Windows and the Windows printing system didn't do something funny. And yep, my settings are still there. So I'll say OK. Now there's two places that we can set print driver settings, printing defaults for in Windows. One is this advanced tab. This is called printing defaults. Printing defaults are for all users of the workstation. The Windows printing subsystem keeps different registry keys for the current logged on user and printing defaults for all users. So one of the things we also like to do when we're going to create a package, the best practice is to set printing defaults here to what you want. Come back to your General tab and set your preferences as well. And set these to landscape if they're not, and two-sided long edge. To verify, there are times that because the package builder runs under the account of the logged in user and utilizes that to build the package, if the user preference that you're logged in is slightly different for some reason, you might not get the end result you're looking for. So I always will recommend to come in and make sure that the preferences button is clicked and you make your changes here. If they're not, sometimes they're not. It depends on the print driver. Not all print drivers work the same. Not all print drivers save settings to the same way. So it's always good to make sure that the preferences and the printing defaults are done in that manner. Great. Now that I've made the changes to my Lexmark print queue, I'm going to go ahead and say OK there. And I think we're almost ready to build this package. But I'm going to point out one more thing. When you're building a package and you install it on a client computer, you might want the print queue name to show up as something reasonable, something identifiable, so to speak. And one of the settings, so if I, using my Lexmark queue here, and I go to my queues section in the administrator under Output Management, Queues, I'm going to go find my Lexmark PCL SRH print queue. And if we expand the Packages section, there is a setting down here called Workstation Display Name. When I use this print queue in a package, it's going to tell the package builder to use the name Lexmark Secure Queue as the printer name on the client machine. And this is important because you don't want it to be printer on server. You'd rather have it be Lab 1 color or something, or secure print, something of that nature. So here's where you can set what the actual Windows printer name will be that gets installed on the client. The other settings here under question group, must use, authenticate, remove pop-up, blah, and those can be adjusted and they do not cause the package to be rebuilt. If for some reason you want to now change this to be Lexmark Secure Q Lab 1, you'll have to rebuild the package in order for that change to be made onto the client when they install the package. So I'm going to leave mine as it is. The other setting that's important for packages is called Copy Printer Settings. If this is set to no, then what Uniprint Package Builder does, it takes the default driver settings of the print driver as they are. And drivers provide this. So what we always want to do is we want to set Copy Printer Settings to yes. And Uniprint will make a best effort to take the driver settings that we just changed over here in our print queue when we made these changes. Uniprint will make a best effort to copy the settings from the defaults of this print queue onto the package, into the package. When this copy printer settings is set to no, Uniprint will just take whatever the defaults are that the driver has in the registry of the Windows printing subsystem. So now that we're done with that, we have our two little settings here in the queue. We're going to go back to our package definition. We have our webinar Lexmark Mac package, which has two print queues in it. I always like to do two print queues sometimes. Which comes with the automatic updater this time around. So let's go ahead and build our package, and we'll talk about the package builder itself and what it does. I'm going to make the window bigger so we can see more of this. Like I said, there's three checkboxes up here, and the three checkboxes they do different things. They tell the package builder to do several different things. So the first one checkbox there says verify data. What this means is this is the stage of the package builder that actually checks the integrity of the data that will be used to build the packages. Any problems, for example, is missing information or something else, or you're trying to build a queue and the 32 or 64-bit driver or something is up there. This will give you a little warning. The second checkbox called build files. This is actually what will compile and put all of the modules into one executable. That's the pop-up module, the uninstall module, the updater module, the driver module, and the queue module. The build files check, that will cause it to take all of the files that are needed for my brand new package and put them into one single executable. The sync manifest and files option is pretty much basically that. The manifest is the file in the Uniprint package directory here. It's an XML file, and it basically contains, when a client talks to the server, it contains some checksums, it contains versions and IDs. This is not something that you would manually modify, but I pointed out the package builder with the sync manifest and files, what that will do is it'll take all of the information it has in this package definition view, and it'll take what packages it knows it has, and it will sync those with the website. So if you delete a package from here and you no longer want to see it, so we can do that. We'll do that after we build this package, and I'll show you that. That's what that does, sync manifest and files. So now we're ready. We're going to click the start button, and we're going to let this go. And you can see that it's, I can't expand the window, but now we can. And we'll go talk a little bit about what we see here. So we have the build process begins, and it tells us where our packages are going to be built to. Notice these are the settings that we talked about earlier, where we build our packages. Then it goes through and it begins the compiling. It's going to update the package extractor module, create a print install executable and a controller executable. Those are part of internals to it that help unpack things and install them on the client. Then it builds the check module again, builds the uninstall, the pop-up, the updater, our queue, our driver for one, and then you'll notice it'll go back and it'll do the same for our Lexmark driver that we're using on the other queue. And it completes building the three packages for each one, Win2K, the 32-bit, 64-bit, and the light version. It synchronizes some data, loading some definitions, a little bit of an internal thing it does, and we get process completed, and we'll have a process complete with no warnings here at the bottom, and that's it. So we click the close button. Once we're done with that, we should issue a change control to tell the system that we've installed a new package and we've built it and we want it to know about it. So now if I go back to my website and I refresh my website, I now have my new webinar Lexmark Mac package installed. If I show all packages, I'll see the auto detect one, I'll see the 32-bit one, and I'll also see the 64-bit one. So now I'm no longer using in the art department. You've noticed I've grouped here. Let's go back to that a little bit. In the package section, you'll see there's a web page group. And you notice I didn't put a web page group for my new one, but all of my other packages have web page groups. I've tried to use the university theme this time. I have MacLab Building 4. I have art department, science building, math building, and when I look at my website, you'll notice how there's group titles, and the packages that are available for the art department are listed here. This is a do not use group. Normally, if I was not going to use them, I would remove them, but I just wanted to put a name in there because I do use this for testing. And I have a MacLab Building 4 group. And these are all the packages that someone would use if they're in the MacLab in Building 4. So there's a way to group them. You merely just make sure that your group name is the same across the two packages that you want to put into that group. And make sure that these two are the same. So I'm no longer using this queue, and I no longer want the package in here. So if it's not being used and it's been deprecated from the system, excellent. We'll go ahead and we'll delete it. I'm going to delete that. And I want to update the website, but I don't want to have to rebuild packages, all of them. So I'm going to go back to the build package. It doesn't matter what package I select. I've chosen my HP and Mac queue, and what I'm going to do is uncheck verified data, uncheck build files, and just leave the sync, manifest, and files checked. And I'm going to click the start button. And it's synchronizing. Oh, we got a bunch of warnings. What do those mean? Are they errors or a problem? No, not at all. The warnings, you'll see these in here when you're doing that and you've removed packages or things like that. And you'll see it's not defined in a database, therefore remove from the manifest. If you do see errors, that's a different story. There'll be an error. Maybe the build process was stopped because of an error or something like that. Warnings, they're quite okay. They're just a little warning about, okay, it's going to do something and so forth. So now we'll click close. I like to issue a change control. May not have to. We can check the help file for that. We'll go back to our website, and if I refresh my website, my Canon queue is now gone. And that's it's the easy way to update the Uniprint website when you remove packages. And you notice it didn't matter which package I chose. Once I deleted my Canon one, I can use any one of these packages. Just click the Build Package button and make sure that you uncheck the Verify and the Build Files if all you want to do is sync the manifest and the website so that the old package is no longer there. Great. We're also going to add a, so we're going to go back to, now we're going to go to our client machine because we want to install this package on our client. But let's also add a, let's add an end user license agreement. I like to do that now first. So on my machine here, I've prepared a small end user license agreement. It's on my desktop here. It's called my EULA. It can be any file name you like. There is a limit. It cannot be larger than 100 kilobytes in size. So I'll open it. This is what my end user license agreement says. And so I'm going to close it. So before I install this workstation, let's go back and add our end user license agreement, and let's add this to the webinar group. Even though that doesn't exist yet, we'll have a look once we're done. So we're going to go out, click on this, and you'll get a browse button. Just browse, simply browse to your text file that you're going to use. and click the Open button. And then we're going to build the package again. Now, if you're building one package at a time, most often it's a very simple process. It doesn't take a long time. You notice this one went much, much quicker, and that is because there wasn't any change to the driver. There wasn't any change to the queue. All it was merely doing was wrapping up the end user license agreement into the package itself so that that is installed on the client. And we click the Close button. Again, like to do a change control. And let's just go check in the change control for Uniprint. I'll go look that up, and we'll go ahead and use the change control when you update a bank, update printer sign-up services, device or queue properties, Uniprint global settings, job cost method, station property settings, questions, branch, sign-up settings, access times, prompts. So you do not need to use the change control when you update packages, update scripts, update discount rates, user group, account information. So the help file indicates that I do not need to, and I'll show you where I found that information. I just pressed the F1 key. The Uniprint help file. You notice that because I was highlighted on the EULA text file name, it takes me right to that section, so I can see here about adding a package definition. And here's where it says that it can't be larger than 100 kilobytes in size. So I searched for change control, and I go down to common actions. And this is where I found that I don't need to issue a change control when I update packages. When you add a package, you should issue a change control. Updating a package, it does not. So now that we have our package built, let's go out to our website. Let's refresh it one more time. And somewhere there should be a webinar group. There is. And here's our package for today. Excellent. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller for us. Then I'm going to bring over a client workstation that I have. Just going to resume my virtual machine here. Decided to fall asleep on me. For today's demonstration of installing the package, I decided to use a Windows 10 workstation. It's pretty modern. It's what's out there these days. I'm going to log in as an administrator to this machine just for today. And we have our standard background. So let's go and open up Edge. You can use any browser. The experience of the website is the same. Type in my server name. And it should connect me over to my Uniprint package website. And we were just talking about this on the server. So here's a client. The view of it is the same. It doesn't change. You notice there's a running clock in the corner. I think that's kind of neat. We're going to scroll down to our webinar package, and we're going to do the light package. So we're going to do the auto detect, so I can show you what that does compared to the full. So I click on the package. It'll download it. I'm going to just click Run from here. The operating system provides me with a user account control for elevation, and I say yes. I'll minimize the web page. Now, right away, we see my little end user license agreement. The user at this point has the option to choose accept or decline. If you choose the decline, the installer ends. So I'll go back. I'll go to the downloads. I'll just click on it again. And this time I'll run it. And I'm going to accept the end user license agreement. A lot of people have asked us, can you customize this interface? Unfortunately, unfortunately not. There's no way to customize the interface to add a logo, change the color, and things like that. Something that's been provided to product management as a feature enhancement or request. So once I click the accept button, You get a very blank window here with an install button highlighted in the corner, and we're going to go ahead and click install. And you'll see right now it's downloading the modules. That's because we're using the light package, the package that does not contain all of the executables by itself. And then it begins the installing them. So it's installing a check module, and it tells you status. If there are any error messages, hopefully we won't see those today, then the installer will go all the way through. So the check module, the uninstaller, those are for, the check module actually is what does all of the magic. It's the main component that unpacks the files, that creates the directories, that adds registry keys. The uninstaller goes next. The pop-up client's being installed right now. That's the little back-end component that gives you the ability to use the print dialog. Now, mind you, if you're installing packages, you don't need to have pop-up questions. You don't need to use the pop-up client, but the client comes with it. What the package is good at doing is providing you a local printer queue that you don't have to have your users connect over a network, connect to a network print share. So it's a local printer queue. The print job will leave the client. It'll be sent to the Pharos server using LPR over port 515. And the LPD service on the Uniprint server will receive the job and then process it the rest of the way through the system onto the print spooler, then to the secure port monitor, into the secure release service, into the job store as a queued job. If it's a direct print job, it will move its way on out to the print device at that point. You can see here that our installation is done. It successfully installed all of our components. So let's go click the Finish button, and that's it. Pretty simple. Some people have asked, is there a way to silently install the client? So I'm going to just go check on that for us. Is there a way to install the pop-up client silently? Unfortunately, there's not. Is there a way to uninstall the pop-up client silently? Yes, there is. It can be done by typing it at a command prompt, and I'll show you here in the help file. Oops, come on. The uninstalling of the pop-up client can be found in a help file, and it just gives you the uninstall command and tells you at a command prompt in the Pharos bin folder on the client, you can uninstall the pop-ups silently. So now our pop-up client's installed. Let's go check out our printers. So I'm going to type in printers, go to devices and printers, and here we have Lexmark Secure Queue. Because both of these print queues are using the same printer driver, it's a Windowsism where the printers are grouped by like drivers. So if I right-click, you'll see that I have two print queues installed now, a Lexmark Secure Queue and a MacLab queue. You notice the Lexmark one is the default. That's the one that's highlighted here. It's kind of interesting. How can we change that? We'll talk about how we can change that in a few minutes. Let's go check our printing preferences on our Lexmark Secure Queue. And look, excellent. We have landscape as a default, and we have two-sided long edge as a default. So remember I talked about on the Uniprint server, in order to make sure that those defaults come across, two things are important. One is to make sure that your copy printer settings value under the queues section here is set to yes. And then second, you have to make sure that you go to your actual print queue on your server using print management, or you can go to devices and printers. And you want to make sure that printing defaults is set the way you want it. And you also want to just ensure that, because drivers can do funny things sometimes, that the printing preferences is also set the same way. Because a user can change the printing preferences here, but that won't change the printing defaults. So I always like to point out, as a best practice, make sure you do it on both and that they both are the settings you want. And as you can see on our client machine over here today, we now have landscape and we have two-sided long edge. Much it for the printing. Now that I have my print queue installed, I do actually have a pop-up dialog assigned to it. So I open up this is a test color WordPad document. I go File, Print, and I'm going to print to that queue. And it's going to tell me, I've customized this a little bit because I don't really have a Mac lab, but you could say, please enter your Mac station number. Now, there's many ways and lots of variations the way Uniprint can be set up, configured, and used. So I just did this as a little kind of testing. So if I was in my Mac lab here in my office, I have two Macs, and I would maybe type in Mac 1. And depending on how your user base releases their print jobs, maybe they have a PC station and they just wiggle the mouse and they see all the print jobs and they go find the job that says Mac 1, and that would be my print job. And then I would swipe my card to pay for it or some other mechanism, depending on how your environment is set up. So there's many ways to configure Uniprint. So I just wanted to show you a little sample. If I print this job again, the first print job, my client updater kicked in. It says it's checking for updates. What happened? No packages need updating. Let's go back to my server really quick. You'll notice that under my package that we built today, it includes the Pharos automatic updater. How often is that thing going to come up? Is it going to be annoying to my users? Well, under package global settings, mine is configured to check once a day. And if I want to press the function 1 key, it'll tell you just a little bit more about that. Its value determines how often the components to check to see if updated ones are available. If the update frequency is set to 1 day, a user prints 5 times in a day, the components will only check once that day. If the user goes more than 1 day without printing, the components will check for updates the next time the user prints. So if I print again, and this time I print to my Lexmark queue, I get a please enter username or logon ID. Here I'm going to put in J. Geller. That's my logon ID. And I go back over to my Uniprint server. We're just going to check really quick in our job management section to make sure that our print jobs made it to the server. And it says no jobs are found. Well, let's go look at our alerts section. I don't see why I have a print job. I should make it. There's my one print job for me. But I canceled my Mac print job, so let's print to the Mac again. So let's make a Mac 1. Let's hit print. And that's pretty much the pop-up client components, packages, package definitions, and we'll come back and check for our job in a moment. I want to move on to the default printer. You notice the Lexmark is the default printer, but what if I really wanted the other print queue to be the default? So users don't have to always go file print and then choose the printer. In this case, in the Pharos Administrator, there isn't a mechanism to automatically choose. There's my other job, and it's got Mac 1 as the user. There's no option in the definitions here to make this to make my Mac printer the default printer. So we need to do something with a custom module. So I'm going to go ahead and I've already prepared for today a custom module, but I'll show you how we do that. In order to make a, let me go find this here for us, and let's see. In order to add a custom modules are basically little executables that run that perform a function. So the best way that I do that, and I'll show you quickly, and we can just briefly run through this one, is I created a batch file here, and there's actually 2 links, and I'll show on our website that we can post into the thing about custom module, or you can look them up on our support website. Both of these links, they talk about how to add a custom module. They give you some details. We usually use, what you would use is the run DLL32 print UI DL print UI entry command. And then that command has a whole lot of different things it can do. And you can Google that, and there's a big, nice Microsoft article on what that command does and what it can do. So what I do is, I use that. I made a little batch file here, and you can see my batch file does exactly this. I start with echo off. I have a remark statement, and basically, I run this little command, and it'll make my Mac LabQ the default. So before I begin building this whole thing, I'm just going to come over to my workstation here and open up a command prompt, and we're going to test it to make sure that the command does what I want. So if we look at our printers over here as well, oops, too big, and we paste the command into our command prompt and we run it, voila. You'll notice that now the Mac LabQ, if you can see here, is our default printer. So the command works like we want. Now we just have to find a way to put this command into the package and run it and as a custom module. So my command works. So now that I have my command that works, how do you get it to become a custom module? There's lots of different things you can do, and I just chose the simplest custom module to demonstrate today. So what I do is I'm going to delete my other one, and I use a program called WinRAR. WinRAR, there's 7-zip, and there's a bunch of other programs out there that create archives and zip files up and stuff like that. But I use WinRAR because WinRAR comes with a strong set of features for creating what I call self-extracting archives. Self-extracting executables, basically. So I'm going to check the box here. This is WinRAR. I won't go through all the options this application has, but I'll just quickly make the settings I need. So then I'll come over to the Advanced tab. I'll go to the SFX options and path to extract to. This time I'm going to choose absolute path. Setup, nothing there. Actually, yes, I'm going to have to run my batch file. My batch file is called make-default.bat, so I will say make-default.bat. As for modes, I do hide all. You can unpack to a temporary folder if you like. Shortcuts, nothing. Module, nothing. License, nothing. Update. I extract and replace, and I always say overwrite. Then I'll say OK. No other real options. Files to include, that's fine. And I chose the file to run. That's that. Say OK. And you'll notice now in my folder I have my executable, which is going to run this batch file, extract it and run the batch file, which is going to run the command here to set my printer Mac-lab-q as a default. So let's go continue putting this custom module into Uniprint. To do that, the custom module has to go into a specific directory in Uniprint. It has to go into the, and this is explained in the knowledge base article, the custom module has to go into the program files x86, Pharos, bin, shared directory. So what I've already done is I've already copied my module over to this directory. And because the Pharos administrator requires you to have a 32-bit and a 64-bit module behavior, if your package is going to include both architectures of the driver, I've simply just taken my executable that I made over here, and I renamed it to be -x64 so that I can remember, and -x86 so I can remember. And that will alleviate me getting an error message when I go to add the custom module, because what it's going to do is it's going to copy this file all the way back over to the inet pub directory we were looking at earlier in the modules folder. It's going to copy them. So if I only use one file with the same name, I'll get an error that'll tell me, you know, this file already exists. It'll copy it over. It'll copy it over now. Both 3264 will use the same, but because the registry keys are different on those types of architectures, so it's always good to make 2 custom modules if you're going to use both architectures of drivers in your environment. The next thing we do is I set my install order to be 18,000. And the reason is all of the other modules, they know which order to run because of how they're listed in the database. So 18,000 is pretty high. This says between 1 and 20,000. The knowledge base article talks about, and there's another article that talks about how to check, but you won't find many modules that are in that range unless you have probably 50 or 60 packages in your system. Then you could do something like 18,001, 18,002, and so forth. So I'm just going to leave mine as 18,000. I gave my module a name, make MacQ default, so I know what it does. Once I browse out to my folder where my module is stored, it says go find it. So I'm going to go out to where my module is located, program files, x86, Pharos, bin, shared, and I'm going to choose my 32-bit module. It's going to say the destination file already exists. This is that little warning message. Do you want to overwrite it? And I'm going to say OK. I'm not going to do that with this one because it's already there. And then there's some custom module options you'll want to do. You'll want to make sure that the continue install if module fails. And you'll want to check the module does not write result.txt file because the installer component actually looks at the result.txt file to determine whether the package installation on your client was successful or not. So we want to always make sure we check these top 2 boxes. And the knowledge base article details that as well. Great, we have our package stuff there. Go back to our package definition. We'll come back to our webinar Lexmark Mac package, and we have our end user license agreement. That's great. Let's add our custom module. Look, it exists there for us. We say OK. And I now have the must rebuild again. So let's go back to our builder, and we'll build this package again. And get rid of this window for us. And we're going to click the Start button. And it should go pretty quick because there's not a whole lot. It's merely adding the custom module piece to it, and it's added it into a piece in the installer and the controller that are doing that. Great, so we'll say close. I just like to do a change control, but so we'll come back to our client machine where we already have the package installed, and I'm going to go back and revert this for us. You can see what our custom module does. So we can see what our custom module does like we're expecting. So our expectation here is that our custom module will run at the end, and it will make our Mac LabQ the default printer for us. So there are 2, let me go find the other knowledge base article. There are 2 knowledge base articles that we have for custom pop-ups, custom modules. One of them is article number 866, and the other one is a little less detailed to some degree, and that is article 801. And we can provide those to you in the community as well. You can go out to our website, Pharos support, pharos.com/support. Go out to our knowledge base and search for custom module, and you'll get a couple of results there. Great, our client's ready. Let's go log into it. And we're going to go back out to our website. I'll make this a little bit bigger for us. This time I showed you the example of the light package. So this time I'm going to do the full package. So I'm going to go view all packages, scroll all the way to the bottom. We have our webinar Lexmark Mac package. And you notice that, remember I said the small light is only a very small footprint, 2 or 3 megabytes at best. And the large ones, because they contain the drivers, the 32-bit driver is slightly smaller in size than the 64-bit driver. It looks, because there's a file size difference. I'm going to grab the 64-bit one because that's the architecture of my workstation today. A little bit longer to download because it's a little bit bigger in size. And we're going to run it. User account control. I'll minimize the website for us. And again, here's our end user license agreement. If you don't have this in your package, then you don't see this. You just get the install button. So we're going to click accept. Now we have the install window, and we'll click install. So it's checking file versions, and now it's just installing the components. It's not downloading them. So if workstations don't have access to the server, or the website via over port 80, then you could use the full module instead of the light module. There's really no difference between the two, except one downloads the components and then installs them. The other comes with them already embedded into it. Here's our uninstaller being installed. You'll see the little icons in the corner as some of these things go through. You can hover over them and tell you the pop-up module is 18% installed, 49% installed, 62% installed. The little flickering is the running of some commands. That's done. The updater is getting installed. You can kind of see the percentage. Almost there. It's installing the printer driver. Now it's adding a printer queue. Installing another printer queue. Because both queues use the same, there's my custom module. You see that black screen real quick, and it's completed. So we'll click the Finish button, and we're going to go back to printers again. And if you notice, this time the MacLab queue is our default printer. That's what we wanted it to do. So a custom module can do a lot of different things, from set printer properties, from making printers default, to deleting printers, to changing print processors, changing ports, and that Microsoft command does quite a lot. You can extract printer driver data from a print queue on a client. You can use that and use a registry add key, type a reg add to add a registry key, or you can do all kinds of different things in a custom module, just shy of making coffee. If it could, then I'd probably never leave my desk. So let's go and check. One other thing I want to point out on the client is if the package installer fails and there's an error message, there's going to be it'll ask you to open up some controller log text file thing. So let's go. I'm going to show you where that file can be found in the log files and all the other pieces that got installed today on the client. So we're going to go out to, let's go to Users, Administrator, who I'm logged in as, App Data, Local, Temp, and here's our Pharos directory. Inside of here, you'll find all the little modules that were unpacked, the controller log. This will tell you what it did, and it just kind of walks you through installing the pieces, making registry changes, adding registry keys, copying files. Here's the registry keys it added, and all that stuff, copying files to folders, installing the updater module piece, and then down it comes on the driver and installs the driver. Goes all the way through. So with this log file, we can help understand a bit more about why something didn't happen, or what might be happening, or if something goes awry. So I want to point that out. And then you can see all your driver files that ran. And here is our 64-bit version of our make default bat file that we created, and this on the client, and you can see this was the queue we ran. This is what we built on our server. The pop-up module, some other things, the print installer that's used, and the updater module installer. So that's where we can find, we can provide you this information, or if on a client, you can go looking through the app data local temp Pharos folder, and you can see this stuff. Otherwise, we now have our MacLab as our default print queue. That was our desire with our batch file. And we have on our Lexmark, we still have our printer properties as should be landscape and come on, printer preferences. There it is. Landscape and two-sided long edge duplex. Great. So that's pretty much it for the most part. For today with our packages and custom modules and the Uniprint website, I'm just going to give a quick 5-minute run through of all the bits we talked about today as a quick refresher. You may ask, is there any way to separate this out so that I can see all of my printers here? There's a couple of Microsoft ways that you could do by manipulating registry keys and doing some fancy magic in order for that to happen, but it was something that was introduced in Windows 7 where Microsoft decided to group printer objects using like drivers. So let's go back to our server now. And we'll just go back briefly, quick run through on what we talked about today. So that is the who, what are printer installation packages? Printer installation packages, as you can see today, are executables, standalone executables that run to download pieces and components or install and extract full components of the queue, the driver, the pop-up client, the uninstaller, and the updater module onto client workstations. Who will use installation packages? Installation packages are used typically on end-user machines. I normally wouldn't install it on my server. Where do we find them in Uniprint? In Uniprint, they're located in the Pharos Administrator under the Packages section. There's Package Global Settings, where we set all of our settings, where the files will be built to, and shared directory that is going to go ahead and remember this bin shared directory. That's where we put our custom module here. The update frequency, there's package definitions. This is where we view which packages we have in the system, which ones need to be rebuilt, the architecture of it, the time it was last built. If you're using an end-user license agreement file, you can see that. You can group them on the web page. Remember we talked about grouping them. So now all my webinar packages for today will show up in my webinar packages group, or I can add it to the science building group if I wanted to. And actually, just quickly, let's take our and let's add our webinar package to the art department. And we really don't need to build a whole package. All we're really going to do this time is verify our data. Remember I talked about the verified data, the build files? If you're just going to update our website, the little website we have, then you don't need to do the first two. So we're just going to click Start to synchronize our manifests and files. It's completed. We'll say Close. If we refresh our browser now, it didn't move it. And we'll move on. Art department. I didn't show up in my art department. Refresh. It didn't show up. Web page group, we have the Pharos supplied modules, the updater, the uninstaller, and we choose a print queue that we want our users to send their print jobs to in this. We have the build package. Briefly, the Pharos print map builder. It's not widely used, but there is some help file on it. It's kind of neat. Most people either opt for using the Uniprint website, or they opt for taking the executables themselves right from the directory where they get built to, and copying them over to a share or putting them on their own internal intranet website for users to download. We talked about custom modules, what they are. what they can do. They can do a lot of different things, set driver settings, they can copy other files, they can make a printer a default. That was our example today. We wanted our Mac queue to always be the default when we installed 2 print queues. The client installers, briefly, this isn't really part of packages. It is a client installer, but it's not what we're talking about. We talked about the settings on our print queue. You have a print queue here, and you want to make sure that when you install this on your client workstation that it always defaults to double-sided and it always defaults to a certain printing default. I chose landscape because it's different, just to show you that it changes the setting on the client when it gets installed. I use two-sided long edge, but you can do other things, print last page first, whatever your driver has. Like I said, though, the copy printer settings option is not 100% foolproof because the way manufacturers build and create print drivers, there's many times that drivers store settings in slightly different locations in the registry, and our package builder is not aware of that. So it only takes what it can from the standard Windows print subsystem registry keys where it's expected to have the driver defaults. So we talked about that, and that's how we get those settings to show up on our client. We want to make sure that we have copy printer settings. And this name, the Lexmark Secure Queue, that's actually over here on my client machine now. That's what shows up as my printer name. It's called Lexmark Secure Queue. Otherwise, you get the name of the print queue, which is really ambiguous to a user. They don't know what it means. It'll be lex-srh-this-that on server name. So that's where you can give your print queue a distinct name on the workstation. Secure print, color printer, left corner, building 5, whatever you'd like to do. We build our package, and then we walk through the website. Showed you on the website, you can see all the modules. Or if you just go to packages, you see only the auto detect one. So you go, well, how come I don't see the full modules, the full packages? You have to go way at the bottom here. There's a link that says view all packages. From here, you can also view module list. You could potentially edit the website so that people don't get these options if you don't like. It's not necessarily a supported item, so to speak, but it's not that difficult to do. And we talked about when to use them. You use a client package when you want to install a local printer to the workstation, because this is not a network printer, it's a local print queue. And you want to provide the ability to either use the pop-up client, which provides you with the dialog box like we saw today, or you want to use the notify client, which will notify the client some information, such as cost acceptance, or maybe you have a script, a job information script that actually wants to tell the end user your print job is going to cost 5 cents. Do you want to print this, yes or no? So that's when do you use them. Then we covered installation settings. We talked about adding a definition to Uniprint. We talked about configuring the print queue. That's what we did here. We talked about building them and what the build process entails, and we talked about deploying the packages to client PCs using the Uniprint website. Gave you a quick overview of a custom module because we wanted to set a default printer today. Some people may ask, well, how else can we deploy these executables to our client workstations? We don't have what's called an MSI, a Microsoft installer, that gets built. We only build an executable, an EXE. All software deployment tools can be used to deploy executables to client machines. However, the people that do the deployment, they sometimes prefer MSIs. I won't go into the details of it, but you can wrap an executable into a package that can be deployed via the software deployment tool. You can deploy them. There's no silent install. Just keep that in mind. So most often people will provide a website link so a user can download it to their laptop and they can install it, or a lot of times it's actually installed on your lab computers, and that's done by some group within your organization. So a user goes into a lab, there's a PC, they log in, they go print to the color printer, and that's the printer in the corner of the room, and they get charged and their document comes out. So we don't really do too much with deploying the pop-up client that way. And that would cover today's session on printer packages, what they are, where they're used, and so forth.
Thank you, Jeff. Frank speaking again. Wanted to ask if you could address Mac packages briefly. I
Yes.
will be posting and did post a couple times in the chat list here, in the question list here, the link to the 25-plus page document, K-base article that explains how to create the Mac packages, again with lots of screenshots and explanation there. But something we knew we didn't have time today. Just real briefly what they are, how they're done or different.
Okay. I see there's a bunch of questions. Would you also like me to kind of briefly go through those? I think.
Well, we have only about 10 minutes here, so maybe just address Mac packages, and we'll decide if there's another question. Keep in mind for everybody that these questions will be answered and posted in a document for everybody, and we'll try to open up a way for you to respond to those as well and ask further questions.
Sure. So for Mac packages, we don't do. There's not a built-in mechanism to build a DMG, which is what's used by the Mac OS from the Pharos administrator. So, like Frank said, on our website in the community, there's a very nice, extremely detailed set of steps that you can use to create them. They entail a couple of things. They entail downloading the DMG file from our website, and then modifying either you can install the pop-up client directly there, and that's just the pop-up client. And then you add a printer to the Mac OS like you do any other printer using the pop-up port, the pop-up URI, it's a Uniform Resource Indicator, and then you'll get the pop-up dialog. But for packages for Mac, what is done typically is you're copying a PPD file, that's the driver, over to a folder. You're creating a small script that runs that uses the LP admin command to add a printer. And when you install this package, once it's done, and you install it, it actually creates the print queue for you with the PPD driver that you selected. And then there's some other steps that can be taken to make sure that the driver settings are what you'd really like them to be. So you can visit our community for that. It's a very nice detailed document, and it is literally step-by-step, click for click, dialog box for dialog box. So trust me, it took me the first time I went through this years ago. I actually spent probably 2.5 hours following every step just to make sure that I clicked the right way. But once you do it once, then you do it twice, you get the hang of it, and it's really an easy thing to do. And then you can deploy that through other systems you may have, maybe using Casper or something out there to deploy to your Mac clients. And you can use something like that. We don't get too much into the troubleshooting of the deployment process of that, because typically it ends up being some file permissions or something along those lines. But that's how you can create the package, the PKG file that the client, the Mac OS, will use to install the pop-up client and subsequently install the print driver for you with the settings you'd like.
Thank you, Jeff. Maybe just one or two quick questions here. There was a couple that you might be able to address. One was simply how do you choose what print driver to use?
For my package, the print driver that's used for the package is determined from the print queue that I'm going to build my package from. So if I'm going to build, I used, here's a KM secure queue in my test system. It uses a Konica Minolta print driver. The driver comes from the print queue that is chosen when you choose a queue. If I create a new package and I use a different print queue, the package knows that this queue, which is located up here, is using this Windows print driver. So this is how the package builder knows which driver to use for which package. It's based off of the queue relationship and the driver that's tied to the queue.
Great, thank you.
Question? Okay.
What kind of files, Jeff, are allowed for custom modules? exe, bat, VB script, PowerShell, etc. are
Good question. In custom modules, basically you can use you want to start it off with, you can use a VB script file. I use self-extracting executables to run a batch file to kick off a process. I don't think there's a limitation on what it can be. My best suggestion would be to, if you're going to use a VB script and you want to do if you want to do lots of funny magic, and you want to add a lot of logic to it, then I would probably still do a batch file to kick off the VB script. And then from there, because I won't be able to, you could make a self-extracting executable with your VB script and have that fire off. You could do that. I just like to kick things off with the command window. So in that case, then I would, if I was going to do that, I'll just come back over here and show you real quick. What I would then do is, instead of a batch file, I would, I would have a VB script, and then I would just make this a self-extracting executable, and the VB script would do something. So you can do that as well. I've done that in the past.
And in addition to that question, we had the question: are universal print drivers better, or is it better to use specific model drivers? Or is Uniprint driver agnostic?
Uniprint is driver agnostic. I can't recommend PCL, PostScript, universal, non-universal. What I suggest to customers is to find a print driver and do some testing with it on your workstations, find out what works best for you. There's all kinds of challenges with print drivers. You'll find that maybe a universal driver PCL5 will not provide any problems when you build it into a package and install it on your clients. But you may find the PCL6 when you're using that one, the universal one, and you can't get a package to install on your workstation for the life of you. But then you try the PCL5, and that same package from that same that queue actually installs quite fine. So you go, why does the PCL6 work and the PCL5 not, or vice versa, on the same Windows 10 workstation? So I'm using the same workstation, but the PCL6 doesn't install and gives me errors all the time, but the PCL5 works quite fine. So that's a driver operating system conundrum, I call it, where you have to find a driver and something else is going on with that driver and the print spooler on that machine that's given some kind of problem. It's not something we control, and we have any control over. Print drivers fail to install on client machines all the time on different workstations, different drivers or versions. There's lots of forums and chat on the internet about print drivers. So I can't recommend one or the other. What I do say, if one doesn't work very well for you, you can try another, try a different flavor of it, try the model specific. And like I said, choosing a driver is something that's open for a lot of discussion. My big recommendation, again, at the end is to choose a driver that works for you and your environment, and that produces the best output and is stable for you for what you're trying to do.
Thank you, Jeff. I think we'll go ahead and end the webinar at this point. I want to thank you all again for joining us. As you know, we're dedicated to providing training and support. We want to ensure that you have optimal environments and can support the ongoing changes. So again, thank you for joining us. Don't forget the email survey. It is important for improvements for us going forward. We will post the recording tonight or tomorrow. We also wanted to mention we have exciting news around our license renewal pricing, so please contact your account manager for more details soon. And watch for our next webinar details, which we hope to schedule on or around August 10th. So thank you again. We will be answering the questions and posting them, as I mentioned, and enjoy the rest of your week.